Hello, welcome to the 2020 virtual think tank of the National Institutes of Historically Underserved Students. Introducing WVU Parkersburg's president, Dr. Chris Gilmer.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for being here. We're in timelines from coast to coast this morning, time zones. We see in the Zoom before us a lot of beautiful West Virginia Community College students and some of their mentors. And I want the students to know that you have people from 24 states and the District of Columbia who are invited delegates to the think tank who may be listening in through YouTube to our conversation. I want to welcome everyone who is watching, especially those delegates to the National Institutes for Historically Underserved Students. I want to welcome our Chancellor, Dr. Sarah Armstrong Tucker, Executive Vice Chancellor Matt Turner, Vice Chancellor Anthony Hancock, President of the National Issues Forums, Betty Knighton, Kent Spellman, co-chair of the West Virginia Center for Civic Lives Board of Directors, and those two organizations are co-sponsoring this session with us this morning. And I want to thank all of the community college presidents in West Virginia for your support and for their teams. Mostly, I want to thank the students for being here today. We also want to thank all the sponsors of the National Institutes, and they will all be publicly recognized at Saturday morning's closing event. Finally, I want to thank the West Virginia University Parkersburg community for embracing and being supportive of the National Institutes, and I want to thank my excellent team here. I also want to invite you to join us in another historic virtual conversation this afternoon when diverse students from across the United States of America will discuss racism and racial healing with each other, and that will happen at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I now have the honor of introducing to offer a welcome our distinguished chancellor of all of the public universities and colleges in West Virginia, and my friend, Dr. Sarah Armstrong Tucker.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad that I can join you all this morning and help kick off this year's think tank hosted by WVU at Parkersburg. As always, my undying thanks to President Gilmer for his leadership in making this happen, but also just in his incredible partnership in everything we do. You all at Parkersburg have a terrific president, and I'm so happy to be able to participate in this event with him. And I also want to thank all nine of West Virginia's community and technical colleges for participating. Right now, focusing on student success is perhaps more important than it's ever been. In the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, when all we're doing is trying to put out fires and make sure that we take care of the day-to-day, our future often gets lost, and we can't do that right now. We can't lose sight of the promise of post-secondary education and training. We cannot lose sight of the fact that our community college graduates are fundamental to the economic development and growth of the state of West Virginia. Our community college students bolster the industries that make and keep West Virginia's economy going strong. Elevating their voices like you all are doing today through this event is critical as we continue work to help them succeed in their studies and their careers. Students, we need to hear your voices. We need to hear what you need from us to help make you successful so that you can go out into the workforce and make our state successful. On behalf of the community and technical college system of West Virginia and all of our 9 institutions, welcome to the 2020 Think Tank, and thank you all for your participation and engagement today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tucker. And now I recognize Betty Knighton, the president of the National Issues Forums. And Betty, I see that you're on mute, so you'll need to unmute.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Gilmer. I am so glad to be with all of you today. I'm joining you from my home in Charleston. I want to tell you a little bit about National Issues Forums, which are both a set of practices and a network of people. And you're part of those people today because all around the country, people on campuses and in communities are thinking and talking together about the issues that impact our nation the most. And the idea behind National Issues Forums is that we need to find ways for people who have different points of view, different life experiences, and different ideas about what might be done to address public issues in this country can come together and think together very deliberatively about setting directions for our future. So I'm really excited that the West Virginia Community and Technical College System has prioritized this opportunity for all of you to be together today. The materials that you received as preparation for this discussion were developed through a nonpartisan lens to allow you to be able to have the kind of conversation that I described that's made possible through the connection of these 9 campuses, which is extremely exciting. I deeply appreciate all the work that WVU Parkersburg has put into organizing and making this possible through their invitation and their welcome and through Dr. Gilmer's vision. So I'm just really interested in learning what you have to say, and I'm really eager to understand a lot of different perspectives that come from throughout the state.
Thank you so much, Betty. And now we'll have a word of greeting from Kent Spellman, representing the West Virginia Center for Civic Life.
Thank you, Dr. Gilmer. Good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased and honored to be a part of this discussion today and to participate in this think tank. The Center for Civic Life is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that works with communities across the state of West Virginia to learn how to host conversations, important conversations that need to be had in our communities in order to move communities forward. These are often about difficult subjects, sometimes controversial subjects, but the ability to talk to one another respectfully with an open heart and an open mind is an important skill that we all need to master. And this is one of those opportunities. This think tank is an opportunity to learn more about how we can share with one another what's important. My background for the last 15 years has been in community development. And I can tell you that all community development starts with a conversation. And if that conversation, if that discussion, if that communication stops, then community improvement and community development stops. So having the ability to talk with one another to move our best interests forward is critical. Thank you for letting me participate, and I'm looking forward to the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. I want the students to know that you are a part of a historic conversation today. Based on Chancellor Tucker's leadership, there are lots of firsts in the nation for the West Virginia Community and Technical College system, and this is one of them. This is the first time that every community college in the state system has joined together with the National Issues Forums for a conversation. So this is a moment in history being made this morning. And I want you to know also that the reason that I wanted the students to lead the conversation is simple. I think one of the most overlooked voices, and I'm sad to say it, in higher education is the student voice. I will no doubt at my day of reckoning be called to account for much, but one of the things that I won't be called to account for is a lack of recognition that the student voice is the most important voice. So that's the reason that I wanted all of you to come together and have this conversation this morning. And you're going to talk about the economy, and you were encouraged to take that in whatever direction you wanted to take it in your conversations at a local level, and then bring some of your best ideas into a statewide conversation today. We know the historic presidential election that regardless of party affiliation or who you voted for, the economy has been a very big topic of concern that's been driving everything in our country right now. So we want to talk about the economic recovery and situation in the state of West Virginia, in the nation, and we also hope that you'll personalize it, contextualize it, and talk about how the economy relates to you and your family. So sometimes it's hard to think about it in a big picture kind of way. With that, I'm going to turn the program over to Dr. Tori Jackson, who is working tirelessly to be our moderator for all of the National Institute's conversations this week. She'll set a framework and she will introduce our student moderator for this morning's panel. Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, and thank you to the 9 community colleges who are agreeing to participate with us today. I want to recognize the facilitators and then give the facilitator a moment to recognize the students who are participating with us. So first is Raven Thomas from Pierpont. Raven, would you be able to unmute and share your student names?
Good morning. Today with me, I have Christopher Senseri, who's our student government president, Casey Schaefer, who is our student government secretary, and then 2 of our student senators, Garrett Crossland-Boyard and Caitlin Waddell.
Thank you very much. Charles Chip Boyard is representing Eastern. Would you be able to let us know who your students are?
Yes, thank you very much. I have Dylan McClure, I have Taylor Hayward and Gina Livinggood.
Thank you very much. Do we have the facilitator from Blue Ridge, Todd Semino Johnson, with us?
Yes, I am here. Good morning.
Good morning. Would you introduce your students?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My students that we have on this call today are Xavier Hersom, Mark Lannon, Victoria Asper, and Tara Bailey.
Thank you. Angela Ross from Mount West Community and Technical College. Would you please announce your students?
I know for sure that we have Brennan Rinehart and Gabriella Lee. If there's anybody else from Mount West that I'm not seeing on the screen, can you unmute and say hello for us?
I believe you also have Daniel Adkins.
I didn't see him logged in yet. That's the only reason I didn't say.
Okay.
I believe that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Daryl Taylor, can you tell us who is representing Southern?
Yes, we have Bridget Browning, Trenton Browning, and Madison Taylor.
Thank you. Kelly White of New River.
Good morning. This morning, I have the following students that willingly participated. First is Jeremy Miller. He's the president of our Browning Social Services Club. Caitlin Beckelheimer. Melinda Price, who's the secretary of the Browning Social Services Club. Janelle Babkirk, who is a co-historian of the Browning Social Service Club. And Isaiah Smith. I believe that's everybody. Jeremy, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Andrew Rokas from WVU Parkersburg.
Joining our conversation and discussion today will be Tim Bales and Javier Santeliz, and I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Thank you. Phil Klein from Northern.
Good morning. I have the pleasure of sharing my computer this morning with Chris Gregg. He is the president of our Student Government Association.
Thank you. And Michelle Wicks from Bridge Valley.
Good morning. With me this morning, I have our president of our SGA Association, Pamela Hyde-W. We're also supposed to have Joseph Little. I'm not sure if he's having some technical difficulties joining us, but hopefully he'll be joining us soon.
Okay, participants. I'm going to give you a couple of instructions so you know how to participate in today's session. If you would click on the more in your participants section, if you haven't clicked on participants in the bottom of your Zoom screen, when you click on more, you have the opportunity to raise your hand. So that is a way for you to add your comment in without interrupting someone else while they're speaking. Today, we're going to be led by one of our students, Sarah Weeks. She is actually a member of the West Virginia Center for Civic Life. She has been Miss Collegiate West Virginia. She has also recently been a Miss Collegiate Georgia, and I probably said that in the wrong order. So she is going to pose the questions to the students regarding the economy in West Virginia. So she is a communication and media studies student in her senior year, and she is studying strategic communications. Sarah, will you please begin the questions?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our conversation today. I would like to start off by posing the opening question. Do you expect to do better or worse financially in your lifetime than your parents have done, and why? Let's go ahead and get this conversation started with somebody from Blue Ridge, if you would like to speak on this. Mark Lannon, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Yes, so to address the initial question, if I expect to do better financially in my lifetime compared to that of my parents, I would just say that I would expect to, yes, because I know from my family history that my parents worked very hard to raise their level in life and to afford me certain opportunities that they didn't have when they were my age. The expectation when they were growing up was it was sort of not out of the ordinary, but above average to attend things like college and to achieve a master's degree. And when in time for my sister and I, that was the expectation. They had raised the bar, and in hopes that we would continue to raise that bar for our children as well as we continue. So yes, I think that it's reasonable to say that I expect to do better financially in life, just given the opportunities that I've been afforded that they did not have.
Thank you. Would anybody like to continue in that conversation? Jeremy Miller, you've got your hand raised.
To be completely honest, I truly don't know. You know, I'm going to school now. I'm a non-traditional student, older than most college-age students, but I really don't know if I'll do better or not. You look at things like this pandemic that completely altered our landscape and what we all expected out of life. And so, will I do better? I hope so. My parents hope so, but I really don't know at this point.
Thank you, Jeremy. Is there anybody else that would like to touch on the subject on the opening question? Tim Bales, would you like to continue the conversation?
Sure. My parents, neither of them graduated college. And my brother also did not graduate college, although he did attend U of M in Michigan. But I may be the first person in my immediate family to get a college degree. And so I expect that that will have an impact on my future, certainly compared to theirs. Coronavirus has impacted a lot of my family. But what's interesting is that coronavirus has not necessarily had a dramatic impact on the field that I'm going into, since I am a STEM major in the drafting department. In fact, many of those jobs have now gone remote because of coronavirus, which has opened some new doors for opportunities that weren't there before. So I see that I actually have a pretty good chance of perhaps doing financially better than my parents did.
Thank you for sharing, Tim. Is there anybody else that would like to leave any more remarks on the opening question? Victoria Asper.
I think that I will fare just as well as my parents. My mom was a public servant, and I'm hoping to be a public servant. And my dad, he had a college degree, but he worked in the tech field. And my husband is also working in the biotech field. So I think that we'll fare just as well, maybe a little bit better, depending on any further degree getting. But my mom didn't have a degree, and I will. So hopefully we'll do a little bit better. So.
Thank you, Victoria. We have 2 more hands raised, and then we'll move on. Xavier Hersom.
Hi. For me, both my parents graduated with bachelor's degrees. For me, my goal right now is to get a bachelor's in women and sexuality studies. And I'm not sure if I will fare better than my parents. For me, particularly because I'm a transgender person, and in West Virginia, you can actually be discriminated against. It's legal to discriminate against people based on their sexuality and gender identity in the workforce. So it just depends. I'm not really sure.
Thank you for sharing, Xavier. And to wrap up this question, Pamela, would you like to continue the conversation?
As an older non-traditional student, I entered classes at 50, and I entered to get off Social Security. I don't know how much time I have. And since COVID kicked in, you don't know when you're going to get sick or if you're going to get sick. And, you know, you want to make the best of what time you have. But, you know, I would like to hope that I'm going to do better off than my parents. But I've been on Social Security for 18 years. And that's something my parents never got. My dad was disabled. He was blind in one eye, and my mom had to be the main wage earner, but she never went to college. My sister never went to college. So I'm the first one to get to go to college, but I'm not going until I'm 50. So it's quite unknown if I'll get to do better than my parents, hopefully. And in my college, there's a lot of non-traditional older students that are starting now because they just can't make it on things like Social Security and minimum wage. They just can't make it. So, I mean, it's hard to say.
Thank you for sharing, Pamela. Let's go ahead and move on to our first official question. The national economy sometimes seems vague and out of the realm of influence for any individual, but every family is impacted by a strong economy or a weak economy. How have you or your family personally been affected during times of a weak state or national economy? Would anybody like to go ahead and get this conversation started? Janelle Babkirk, would you like to get us started?
Hello. I will say personally, I work at a seasonal restaurant. And so, with COVID and when times are, when the economy is lower, that definitely affects myself and my family personally, as, the guests are what make me money. But I agree, it is vague. It's hard to think about it on a national level.
Thank you, Janelle. Would anybody like to continue with this question? If somebody from Northern would like to continue this conversation.
Yeah, hi. Hopefully I remember your question correctly, but I remember in 2007, that's when I graduated high school. And of course there was a economic downturn at that time. And I just remember it being so difficult to find work. I remember calling contractors in the phone book and offering to work for free to just get some experience, and no one would even hire me then. So it was definitely a tough time, and it's definitely gotten better. It seemed like it was getting better than it was in 2007, but again, with the COVID stuff, it's been taking a downturn again. So yeah, it's definitely not easy.
Tim Bales, would you like to continue?
Yes. I graduated high school just 1 year after our last speaker, and I graduated high school in Michigan. And at that time, we had a very similar problem where it was very difficult to find jobs. But then once I did find work, I was working in factories. And at that time, a lot of Michigan goods started being manufactured in foreign countries. And so we began to see jobs starting to massively cut their workforce. We saw significant layoffs. I remember one facility that I was working at, we had an entire production line that had only launched 1 year prior, and it brought in about 300 new workers, and they all lost their jobs within 2 years because of the economic downturn. That factory was actually moved to Mexico. So my friend's family directly impacted by that.
Thank you, Tim. Is there anybody else that would like to touch on that? Melinda Price, your hand is up.
Looking on a national level is kind of hard to look at, but looking on a state level of my own experience before I started college of working in the restaurant industry, when the coal mines were being shut down and working in restaurant industry, majority of our income comes from coal miners. And so when that happened, there was a huge decrease in income for myself and shifts, my hours being cut. So that was a real hard, significant cut in my income financially and ways and means to pay my bills.
Thank you, Melinda. Brennan Rinehart, your hand is up.
Wait, I'm not Brennan, I'm Gabby, but I don't know why it says that, but
yeah, I'm Brennan Rinehart. We had trouble finding the meeting, so I forwarded her my meeting link, so I think she's logged in under my name.
Yeah.
No problem, Gabby, if you'd like to continue.
No, the way I saw it, because I was in Houston, Texas, is where I was at whenever, that big thing during 2008. whenever like the economy was down. Like we got hit by Hurricane Ike right after that, which did not help. So I noticed like a lot of people didn't have insurance to like do the home repairs because they couldn't afford it. So.
Thank you, Gabriella. Next up, Bridget Browning, your hand is raised.
Good morning. I just wanted to touch base to the lady who was saying about the coal mining. Here in Southern West Virginia, that is basically the means here of work. A few years back when that hit, I do know that my husband, he had to actually, in order to keep his job, and from them laying him off or having to shut the company down, they kind of worked with another company. He worked for Caterpillar at the time. And instead of laying him off, they gave him an option to go down south and work in Charleston, South Carolina, I think. And he was gone for weeks at a time, but it kept him from not being laid off, but yet it kind of maybe reduced pay and stuff. But it really hit our economy and our family hard during that, when that happened.
Thank you, Bridget. Is there anybody else that would like to continue this first question? If not, we will move on. Tim, would you like to touch on this question?
Yeah, so it's a quick question. Is this talking just in the past or contemporary? Like, are we being asked to speak about now as well?
You're well open to either which way your mind takes it.
Okay, so on a national scale, it is a little bit tough to wrap your head around the statistic that up to 60% of business closures due to COVID-19 may be permanent. A statistic that I actually really wish would have been included in the packet that we got. But many of the business closings are going to be permanent. And so right now, as we get into the economy reopening, we're probably going to be dealing with a lack of work available, which is going to put a lot of people in very difficult financial situations.
Thank you, Tim. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next question. How has COVID-19 affected you and your family economically? Loss of income, closure of small businesses, interruption of community services, challenges to your education, for example? Have you or your family been directly impacted financially by the pandemic, and how? Would anybody like to open up this conversation? Tim, would you like to open us up?
Sure. When the pandemic hit, like many of you, I was attending college, which dramatically changed the shape of my college experience. Since I am one of the officers, I'm the vice president of the art club, and that's a club that does not benefit very much from Zoom meetings. But also, the majority of my household worked in the restaurant industry. So when COVID-19 hit and everything shut down, we were one of the first businesses to be shut down. And we stayed shut down with a lot of financial uncertainty until unemployment legislation was passed, until the stimulus was passed. And so for at least a month and a half, we had no financial stability, no sense of security. We did not know if we would be able to pay rent or if a moratorium would be placed on rent. We had no idea how we were going to pay our bills. We actually had to begin discussing with other family members and friends of potentially staying with them because their jobs had not been canceled yet.
Thank you, Tim. And if anybody needs to reread the question or has any question about what the original question was, it is being posted in our chat. So if you by chance forget the question in the midst of all of this, feel free to check out our chat and you can boost your memory. Victoria Asper, your hand is raised next.
For me, when COVID hit, I was working as a substitute teacher at the public schools, and my son is a student there. So when the schools closed, we lost my income since I wasn't a I didn't have any benefits as a substitute aide. And then just having my son home, was a kindergarten at the time. So it's hard to try and teach your kid. And just my loss of income kind of really had made us stretch our budget.
Thank you, Victoria. Next up, correct me if I say this wrong, but Singh.
Yes, I lost my voice. I'm sorry. I will try my best. When the pandemic hit, I'm studying in Eastern. I mean, I still study right now also, but at the time I took 3 accounting classes. And after the pandemic hit, we have to move on online classes. And I'm from another country, and I prefer somebody explain me in front of the board and then, write it down. So when they moved to online classes, it was really, really hard for me on that semester. And 3 accounting classes, that was terrible.
Thank you, Singh. Daniel Adkins, would you like to continue?
Yeah. Whenever COVID hit, me personally, I was already on unemployment. The COVID just was basically an overnight deal, shutting everything down from what I could see. But that led me not being able to return to the work that I was doing because it did involve travel and going to different places, and companies weren't comfortable with bringing people around their organizations because they didn't know who they'd been around, and the COVID, but it also affected me personally because at that point I had just moved from Kentucky back to West Virginia and was trying to get help with housing, and that put a stop to everybody trying to get housing help through the HUD authorities. So it took a big turn there, and it really delayed me because at the time it was just me and my daughter. I was raising my daughter. So kind of put us between a rock and a hard place of, are we going to have shelter? Are we going to be able to keep our car? So yeah, it really impacted more things than just jobs as well.
Thank you, Daniel. Pamela Hyde-W, you have your hand raised next.
Yes, it took me 15 years to be around people again after my injury. And I started at school, and I come out of my PTSD a little bit, and I enjoyed school, and then COVID hit, and I suffer from what a lot of our students suffer from, the depression of not being able to go to school, of not being able to be around people. And as an SGA officer, we find it hard to reach our people, to get them out of that, to encourage people and make them feel comfortable that they're not alone. This has been very hard on everybody. The isolation and the aloneness, that has been very, very hard.
Thank you, Pamela. Isaiah Smith, would you like to continue the conversation?
Yes, ma'am. The pandemic affected me in multiple ways. One of the ways is I'm a server here for Golden Corral. And as soon as the pandemic hit West Virginia and the numbers began to grow more and more and more, of course, we had to close down the business, as most did around that time, so that way we could cause less of a spread. Well, that also affected how I function with college. I'm way better as a hands-on person, I have found out, than I am through the screen. So it did affect me mentally, and it challenged me a lot. And financially, I wasn't able to get the money I needed for the bills, I guess you could say. So another thing I do here is I'm also a full-time worship leader, and we had to have our church through Zoom, as most churches kind of did. So everything was an adjustment. For my family's sake, a lot of them actually benefited from this, because a couple of people in my family, they work in the hospital. The only struggle I think we found with that was, we didn't know too much about the pandemic at the very beginning. We knew what it held and how damaging it could be. So having them come home, we would be in our rooms, we would stay to ourselves. So it did affect me greatly. And of course, I went on unemployment eventually and got everything figured out and situated. But even to this day, with the pandemic going on, they opened back up Golden Corral, and then they just shut it back down again. So I'm still trying to figure things out with that.
Thank you, Isaiah. Does anybody have any more remarks regarding our most recent question before we move on? Mark Lannon, would you like to continue?
Yes, and I would really like to echo what Pamela was saying. I think something that a lot of us tend to overlook is the emotional effect that this has had on us as a community. One of the silver linings is I think that it's given people an opportunity to kind of step back and reevaluate what's truly important. I know I, for one, my decision to continue my education came during the midst of this pandemic, and it was because work was so hard to come by. The roles that I was sort of stuck to taking, I didn't feel safe in those roles anymore. I didn't feel safe having to take the work that was available to me. So I wanted to take steps to give myself more opportunity. Those effects are broad as well. I also have a 2-year-old daughter. Well, she's about to be 2. Her birthday's in next week, actually. But these are prime years for her to be socializing, and those opportunities are gone. I'm thankful that she's not old enough to have to worry about going to school. At the same time, it keeps me up at night sometimes, wondering what she's missing out on. The fact that we can't take her to go see our friends and their kids and have that socialization that she really needs at this age. And I think that's true for most of us. I'm lucky to be able to afford the bills, frankly, but just missing out on that time with your family and your friends, and then seeing some people not taking it seriously at all, it's creating tension between a lot of people where you don't want that tension to be, and it just adds to that stress and multiplies the effect. And I think it leaves a lot of people uncertain, and that wreaks havoc on people's emotional psyche, and whether or not it's worth it to look for work, and what's the trade-off. Is it worth it to risk your well-being to be able to keep the lights on for another month? For a lot of people, yes. It's not a decision that they feel comfortable making. It's one that they feel that they're forced to make. And I think people need to have more options.
Thank you, Mark. We have 2 more panelists raising their hand, and then we will move on to the next question. Madison Taylor, would you like to continue?
Hi, I just wanted to agree with that. My dad has thankfully kept his job. He works at Southern, so every time, we go back and forth between online or in person, he can just switch to at home, working at home. So that has been great for us. Thankfully, he's been able to keep his job, but in my own personal life, keeping up with school and stuff has been harder than normal, just because it's hard to find the motivation, and it kind of seems selfish, to say stuff like that when people are actually getting sick and dying, and their family members are getting sick and dying. And I feel like a lot of people don't want to mention that as often as we should, because it just seems not as important, but it still is. Because I'm usually a straight A student, and it's just hard for me to find motivation to do what I normally do, and actually get up and go to class online and stuff. And also finding a job and stuff, like trying to find time for both. It's just crazy. That's all.
Thank you, Madison. Gabriella Lett, you are next.
Yeah, like right before the pandemic, my mom was laid off and she lost her resident alien card. So like she decided to renew her resident alien card since it was supposed to expire later this year anyways. And the COVID pandemic led to extremely long wait times for that. And she ordered hers back in January and barely received hers last week. And without that, she was unable to get a job for like pretty much the whole year.
Thank you, Gabriella. Pamela Wines, you are next.
When I used to work, I worked skilled trades, and there was always this argument that people working minimum wage shouldn't get a living wage. I think this right here, this COVID proved how important that everyone should have a living wage. The people that work at Walmart, the people that work at McDonald's, the people that work everywhere deserve a living wage because they did the jobs that held us over during their sickness. They carried us through when no one else could. And I think that's very important that people should know, no matter who you are, you deserve a living wage. Everybody does. They have families to support just like we do.
Thank you, Pamela. We will now move on to our next question. Do you plan to remain in West Virginia after you finish your education? If not, what could be done to convince you to remain in the state? Mark Lannon, would you like to open up the question?
Absolutely. This is something that my spouse and I have actually discussed at length. I'm currently working towards my master's in education. I plan to get into teaching. And the state of teacher pay in West Virginia is not great by national standard. And as much as I would love to stay in my community and try to lift this community up by any means possible by doing the job as best I can, it's also difficult to look at that income and then look at a 15-minute commute across state lines into either Maryland or Virginia and see what I'm leaving on the table. It becomes that very difficult conversation of, do I worry about my community before my family, or the other way around? And again, that's not a decision that I'd like to make. And luckily, I don't have to make it yet, but it'll be here sooner than later. And in response to what can be done to convince me to remain in the state, I think that something that, particularly to the field of education, localized pay needs to be in the conversation. If we expect teachers in the Panhandle specifically to stay in the Panhandle, you need to give them a reason to stay. Because right now, we lose a lot of good people. We lose a lot of good teachers. We lose a lot of good citizens to other places because the grass is just greener.
Thank you, Mark. Madison Taylor, would you like to continue?
Yes. I am personally going into psychology, and hopefully one day I'll be like a psychiatrist, something along that field. And right now, I've never even been to a psychologist. I don't know anyone who has. It's not like a common thing from where I live, especially because there's nothing in Southern West Virginia. Like we have a McDonald's, we'd have to drive 45 minutes to get to a Walmart. So let alone a therapist or someone along that field, we have to drive all the way to Charleston or Huntington. And maybe if I could stay in one of those areas, I would do a little better. But I just feel like if I left the state completely and went somewhere, more populated or something, I would do better. And obviously I want to support a family one day, and I have to be sure that my business will work out. And like, if I'm not sure, I can't rely on that, if that makes sense. So I guess maybe if we could somehow bring more people into the state, raise the pay like he was saying, I don't know what would make me stay, but that's my dilemma right now.
Thank you, Madison. Caitlin Beckelheimer.
Hi. I believe because I'm going for social work, so, that makes you want to help the economy. So I actually want to stay in West Virginia. I want to do all I can to make sure the economy has a better outcome than, all of this corona that has, it really has messed it up. Childcare is closed, so even if you do manage to keep a job, you don't have anywhere to send your kids most of the time. And then, my job is at home, so I go to school online, I work online, I don't have time to even go out and do anything anymore. I stay in the house almost all day, every day. So I do want to stay in West Virginia and help it see better days.
Thank you, Caitlin. Victoria Asper, you're next.
I'm planning to stay in West Virginia. I'm going for education right now. And my husband and I have talked numerous times about, he works in Frederick, Maryland, and we've talked a lot about moving closer to where he works. But we love our community so much that we couldn't bear leaving it. And I want to be a part of making our community better. So for us, even though as a teacher, I wouldn't be making as much as I would in Maryland, the community aspect is a huge pull for us to stay here.
Thank you, Victoria. Daniel Adkins.
Yeah, I plan on staying here in West Virginia. My goal as a criminal justice major, from being previous law enforcement in Kentucky when I used to live there. I am from here, and I can honestly say I wouldn't want to live in any other state, because to me, West Virginia and West Virginians represent very good, how do I put it? Very good qualities. Everybody has very good qualities. It seems like everybody tries to help. That's what West Virginia is about. And my goal after college is to help as many people as I possibly can. That way they can enjoy West Virginia as much as I do.
Thank you, Daniel. Tara Bailey.
Can everyone hear me? So I definitely plan to stay. I've been born, raised in West Virginia. I left briefly. I joined the United States Air Force, and I got to see some of the world. But I love where I'm from. I love West Virginia. I love our work ethic, our values, our morals, the way that West Virginians do things. I'm also a recovering addict, and I see the need for recovering addicts in our state, and I see just how addictive West Virginia is across the board. So I'm hoping to continue my degree in social work, get a concentration on addiction disorders, and continue to work with the addicted population, as well as our veterans suffering with PTSD, with the co-occurring disorder of addiction. So I have every intention of staying here and trying to find a way to better our economy. The more we focus on recovery, the more productive members of our society that we can create, and that will then boost our economy.
Thank you, Tara. Singh, would you like to continue the conversation?
Yeah, I love West Virginia. I love our town. So I will surely stay, but if I have a steady job in accounting field, because I'm the eldest in our siblings, so I want to support my family. Without a steady job, it will be really hard. So yeah, if it is there, I will surely stay.
Thank you, Singh. Xavier Hersom.
I will not be staying in West Virginia as an LGBT person, because there's so many, you can be discriminated against in so many levels, like housing, employment. Foster care agencies can discriminate against LGBT parents. I'm just tired of being treated like a second-class citizen, and I want to be in a state that recognizes me as a person who contributes to the state.
Thank you, Xavier. Pamela Hyde-Wines.
I have a son, and the part that scares me, I like West Virginia. I like all the outdoor activities. I've traveled all over the world, but I was born in Michigan. And my parents, to get me away from the drugs in Flint, they used to take me up north near Traverse City and spend the weekends and the holidays up there. And the part that worries me is my son, we're close to Huntington, and the drugs is what scares me, the addiction and the drugs and all that. And his brother was addicted, and I just worry, for him. I want him to get a good education. That's the one hope to overcome addiction and everything, is to get people a good place in life, to get them an education, to get them away from bad influences, and to get them out of this stuff. And that's what I would hope for these people, is to get them educated and to get them away from the bad influences, and to get them better influences so that they can grow and have a better way of life. And then it would be better for everybody.
Thank you, Pamela. Isaiah Smith, would you like to continue?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you. To answer the question, yes, I do intend on staying in West Virginia for a couple reasons. One of the programs that I'm in right now, I'm in a social work program, trying to get into that degree, and it's for my heart for people. And in this state, it's kind of like a few have commented, and you see a lot of drug addiction in this state. You see a lot of things of that degree, and of course there is lack of opportunity in this state, and there is a lot to this state that I believe not many people see or choose to ignore. But I have a big heart for the people in this state, and I will be honest, in the past I would have said no because of the same reasons, lack of opportunity and things like that. But where my heart is so big for people here, I feel as if we need to give them a chance. And of course, where I'm also a part of a church, this is going to affect me differently. But one of the things that our church likes to do is we like to go out into the community and we like to bless others, whether that's with money, whether that's with time talking with others and just about their issues. And we try not to look at it as, okay, this person is a drug addict and this person is, it could be a wealthy man, and, we should talk to this person more than this person. We look at everyone equally. So I would like to stay in this state until I see some type of impact happen within our communities, and also an impact and a growth within our educational system.
Thank you, Isaiah. Melinda Price, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. I do plan to stay in West Virginia. I've lived here my whole life, and my degree that I'm going for is to be a social worker. And I knew what I was getting into as being a social worker and what the income was on it. And my common purpose of being a social worker was to help others. And my roots are here in West Virginia, and that's where I plan to stay and help the needs of what us West Virginians need. And that's all.
Thank you, Melinda. Trenton Browning, would you like to continue the conversation?
Yes, ma'am. So to continue the conversation, I hope I could stay. I'm a nursing major, and the reason I'm pursuing this career is because I fell in love with helping people. And you wouldn't believe how many people come into a hospital with broken hearts rather than broken bones. And it all starts with one person, one conversation, like what we're doing now. How can I make a difference? It all starts with a conversation. So what would cause me to stay is more people like this, great minds getting together to make a difference, taking the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Trenton. Javier Santelice, would you like to speak on this topic?
Yes. As much as I love West Virginia, I feel like I'm being forced to leave because I will not be able to afford my graduate school with the wages being offered here in West Virginia. I just can't stay. There's no feasible way for me to afford it.
Thank you, Javier. We will be moving on to our next question. How are college students particularly affected by a weak economy, and how can college students help to improve the economy? Is there anybody that would like to open up this conversation? If somebody from Eastern would like to open up this conversation. Jeremy Miller, your hand is raised.
Yeah, so I feel like most college students are probably working entry-level jobs, fast food, things like that, just trying to get by. And so when you have a weak economy, a lot of times those are a lot of the first things that get put on the back burner, right? You know, you're making less money, you're eating more at home, you're not going out, things like that. So there's a definite impact when the economy is weak on college students themselves because hours start getting cut, things like that. As far as what college students themselves can do to better the economy is simply continue on what we're doing and get our degree and make sure that we, go into a field that we are contributing not only to society, but to the economy as well.
Thank you, Jeremy. Daniel Adkins, would you like to add on to it?
Yes. I believe that as part of us being part of community colleges, we need to raise awareness and look at what issues our local communities are suffering from. We need to come together with plans on how we can help benefit our local communities. And if we do that in all of our communities throughout the state, we can better the state as a whole. But we need to address what issues that we are having and how we can do that through our community colleges, is to bring up even fundraising or donations to help people in need. Anything like that that can help the people in need. Then we can work on building our economy locally, and that will help sustain our county economy, then lead to a state economy.
Thank you, Daniel. Pamela Hyde-W, would you like to continue?
If there was a living wage or a raise in the minimum wage, then college students wouldn't have to work 2 and 3 part-time jobs, and they could focus on their studies. They could have more time to focus and study and do their studies.
Thank you, Pamela. Xavier Hersom, would you like to speak on this?
The college students could be affected by a weak economy in several ways, but 2 ways in particular. If a lot of people lose their job in a certain area, college students are going to be the last people, most likely, that businesses are going to hire, and they'd rather hire older, more experienced individuals because college students probably won't keep that job very long, and they know that going in. So that's one reason. And also, there probably will be less financial aid for students if the economy is really weak. But college students can help to improve the economy by earning their education and bringing their own skills into their communities. And they may even they may open up their own businesses and bring more jobs to several people in their communities.
Thank you, Xavier. Is there anybody else that would like to continue this conversation? Janelle Babkirk?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on what Trenton and Daniel said about just meeting in groups like this and talking together and identifying the needs in the local communities. I feel like, you know, when we have our groups in our schools, but when we branch out like this and meet others who are like-minded, we can collectively, like I said, identify needs and put our minds together and come up with plans to, you know, just better everything. And we could also, you know, volunteer, like, you know, Daniel said, fundraising, volunteering for marketing, or just kind of putting our minds together to figure out what needs to be done. And then I'm in the social work program. So, you know, when we get our degree, I feel like we'd have a good base and experience to possibly implement programs like that for our clients to become involved in the community. So I think that's a great idea. Like they said, just meeting people like this and talking.
Thank you, Janelle. Tim Bales?
So I couldn't do much more than echo as far as how it impacts college students, but how college students can give back. College is one of the very few places that cultivates leadership skills. And it also cultivates public speaking skills. And those are something that communities during a time of economic hardship typically need very much, because leaders are able to get things done and get things moving. Leaders become entrepreneurs. So college is one of the very few places where you can cultivate those skills, where people can come in and gain those skills. So I think that one of the things that college students can definitely offer back into their community is direction and leadership.
Thank you, Tim. We will now be moving on to our next question, and please note that this next question will build off of your recent answers. So building off of what we've recently covered, what steps can West Virginians take to diversify and improve the job market for you and your peers? Is there anyone that would like to open up this conversation? If someone from Mount West would like to open up this conversation?
Yeah. To better suit the job market, you know, we need to think about these businesses need to think about their employees as well. Wages aren't as big of an issue in West Virginia as some other states, but they can be better. We need to think about our employees. They need to value employees, and college students that are working right now, I'm sure there's a lot of us on here that have jobs, know the importance of working for a good employer. So I believe that employers need to take into consideration the employees' views to better suit their business and to better suit the employee.
Thank you, Daniel. Xavier Hersom, you have your hand raised.
One problem that a lot of West Virginia faces is there isn't internet access or even cell phone service. And if you don't have either of those things, you're going to have a lot less companies coming into that part of the state and offering people more jobs. So I think that's a really important first step for West Virginia to take on multiple levels.
Thank you, Xavier. Brennan Rinehart, would you like to continue?
I think that's a great point, that we should look into expanding internet access and making it more desirable for out-of-state companies to come in and create jobs, or for our local business owners put in place more protections and give them the confidence and everything that they need to feel comfortable opening a new business, a new local business. I think if we support local business, then we'll generate, economic growth locally. And yeah, just providing more out-of-state incentives for out-of-state companies to come and create jobs here as well.
Thank you, Brennan. Tim Bales, would you like to add on to that?
Yes. One thing that I think would be very beneficial would be to invest in more sustainable business models and products, because many of the investments that have been made in the Mid-Ohio Valley or near here have turned out to be quite temporary. Investing in infrastructure such as expanding broadband into rural areas is something that, as mentioned in our packet, will not necessarily generate a return. But when you're talking about infrastructure, it's also important to remember that infrastructure is not necessarily intended to guarantee a return, but to incentivize new business. So right now, we have a very big shortage in the United States of STEM professionals. And if we bring in more internet coverage, we may have an opportunity to lure STEM professionals into our state or to stay in our state. And as we increase things like broadband, as mentioned before, we could also open up access to people working from home. And now, one other thing that I think is important is that when I say sustainable business, I don't mean necessarily green businesses. I mean business models that do not simply go away after a few years.
Thank you, Tim. Pamela Hyde-W, would you like to continue?
This may sound weird, but it's not always cheap to live in the city. So if you expand like a bus route or tram, get a tram or something, so that people that have to live in the cheaper areas that don't have a vehicle can get back and forth to the bigger cities, that would be very helpful to some people.
Thank you, Pamela. Is there anyone else that would like to continue this conversation before we move on to the next question? All right, moving on to the next question. How do you feel about the distribution of wealth in this nation? A very small percentage of the people control most of the wealth, and a large number of people are poor. If you think this is unfair, whose responsibility is it to address this problem? Would someone from Bridge Valley like to open up the conversation? Jeremy Miller?
I think that each individual is responsible for himself. If we think it's unfair, it's up to us to do something about it. I think too many times we take a victimhood role so that we can put off our responsibilities on someone else. So if we don't like the way things are, it's up to us to do something about it. So, America is not about the equality of the outcome, but the equality of the opportunity to succeed. So if we want to do better, we have to be better.
Thank you, Jeremy. Pamela Hyde-W, would you like to continue?
I think the taxing system should be restructured and should be tiered. And instead of the people that make the higher incomes not paying taxes, they should be taxed too. But I'm not saying taxed a lot, but they should be taxed according to their income. It shouldn't be the middle people paying everything.
Thank you, Pamela. Brennan Rinehart, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. I think there is growing wealth inequality in America. I think that affects people all across the economic spectrum. I think the economy can only be measured by how well the lowest income families are doing. I think one thing that would help would be to raise the corporate tax rate. It was as high as 70% before Ronald Reagan. But since then, it really hasn't been above 40%. So I think raising that back to where it was would be a huge help. It's kind of like Social Security, where people are paying their fair share so that we can make sure that our senior citizens are taken care of. We should apply that to more issues. And I think if wealthy families paid the same percentage as middle-class families, we'd be off to a good start.
Thank you, Brennan. Tim Bales, would you like to continue?
When this subject came up, I immediately was concerned that this might quickly become a partisan issue. We've talked a little bit about taxation in this, but the primary focus on this is wealth inequality. And wealth inequality, unfortunately, is a statistical fact in America, and distribution of taxes is unlikely to have a significant impact on wealth inequality. Wealth inequality builds out of opportunities that are available and wages that are earned. So even a marginal change in taxes is not necessarily going to guarantee that anyone will earn much more money, at least in an effective way that would allow them to build wealth. The better solution to wealth, or to gaining wealth individually, is typically to advance yourself through education or through entrepreneurship. But if we want to try to create a more equal society, then we have to embrace the idea of higher wages for even what we might consider entry-level jobs.
Thank you, Tim. Caitlin Beckelheimer, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. I just want to touch base on what the speaker before me said. You are correct, but I believe that if we are to help our economy not be so poor, we have to help each individual. So we would have to help them get the resources to go to school, to get better jobs, to be able to self-sustain, you know. And I just wanted to touch base.
All right, we will be moving on to our final question. Although this conversation should continue across your campus and across our wonderful state, we will move on to our final question for today. What is more important to you in your career, financial security or enjoying the work you do? Jeremy Miller, would you like to open up this conversation?
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you for the board and the forum in itself. I appreciate that. For me, it's more than the paycheck. It's enjoying the work that I do, having that fulfillment in the work that I do. Paychecks only get you so far. At the end of my life, I don't think I'm going to look back and be like, I wish I had more money in the bank. I think I'm going to look back and say, I wish I would have done more, whatever it is, more time with my family, or I wish I would have had something that fulfilled those needs in my life as opposed to just putting money in a bank.
Thank you, Jeremy. Madison Taylor, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I was taught and raised to love my job. I hopefully have found my calling, I guess you would say, where I will hopefully love it and make enough money to support my family. I wouldn't say, I would rather have a job that I love and wouldn't mind going to every single day if it would keep me at least able to survive with a family or whoever I may be with, whatever I may be doing. But definitely loving my job goes before the pay.
Thank you, Madison. Melinda Price.
For me, happiness does not come within the paycheck. Yes, it's great to be financially stable and everything, but if it's a job that I enjoy doing and it doesn't really feel like a job, and it wouldn't be harder to go to work. I have been in jobs that I do not enjoy, and it was a struggle each and every day to get to work. So for me, money comes within my happiness of what I enjoy doing.
Thank you, Melinda. Caitlin Beckelheimer, would you like to continue?
So she made a great point, actually. I was going to say that they're both so equally important. I mean, if you don't like your job, you're probably not going to stay there very long, you know, and you're just going to be jumping job to job. But also, if you love your job, but you're not making a lot of money and you have a family to take care of, I mean, you need something that's kind of in between, something that you can enjoy and still support yourself in doing.
Thank you, Caitlin. Singh, would you like to continue?
Oh, for me, enjoying job is priority because life is short and money, after we die, we cannot bring anything. We have to leave everything down. So enjoying the life is the most important thing for me.
Thank you, Singh. Pamela Hyde-Wines.
After being on Social Security, I kind of disagree. It's not that I want to be wealthy, but I want to pay my bills. And I want to be able to enjoy some freedoms in life and maybe travel a little bit with my family or go on vacations. I can do jobs for that. I can work for that. I'm willing to work for that. That's not a problem. I just don't want the worries on my back. You know, that's a lot of worry. Where are you going to pay for this? How's this money going to come from? Are you going to be able to keep your car? Where's this electricity money coming from? You know, that's a lot of worry to carry on your shoulders. And unless you've had it, you really don't know. Day after day after day, those worries can eat you up. So if you've carried those worries, then sometimes it's a little bit more easier to work a job you don't really like all the time, just to not have those worries on your back. Again, I don't have to be filthy rich or anything. You know, I'm not asking that. I just want to be able to have the worries off my back.
Thank you, Pamela. Xavier Hersom, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I believe that both financial stability and also having a job that you enjoy, both of those things are very important because you spend most of your waking hours in your job. And you should, I believe that everyone deserves a living wage if you're working. So if everyone had a living wage, then you'd be able to choose a job easier that you enjoy doing.
Thank you, Xavier. Janelle Babkirk.
Going into the helping profession, you know, liking my job has always been more important to me, because it's about helping people who need it, because we all do at some point in our lives. However, you know, financially, it's a balance, just like everything else in life. You know, if I have a position that I enjoy, but I'm able to meet my own needs, support my family, then I'm going to be stressed. I'm not going to be able to be the help that I want to be. With that said, I've lived on very little for a lot of years, so I think I'll be all right. But I would say, you know, liking job's more important, but a balance for sure.
Thank you, Janelle. Isaiah Smith.
Yes. So I wholeheartedly believe that enjoying the job is way more important. And the reason being is that to kind of follow up with Janelle, we are both kind of in that same position of we're wanting to help people. And sometimes, depending on the job or the course that you go on, you're not going to get paid as much as some other people would in different professions. But where my heart is so big for people, it's always been big for people. I am willing to sacrifice having a little more money to help those out there that are in need. Because not only does that make me happy, but ultimately it would make those around me happy. Because I have noticed when people go into jobs that they don't enjoy and they come back home to their families, sometimes they may feel the brunt of that. Not only that, but those will feel that atmosphere that you're carrying from that job on back to your family. And it's hard to shake that from that car ride from your job back home. You'll feel tired, and not to mention, we can go on and on about mental health and you not liking the job. I've been a part of jobs before where I knew in my heart it was great money, but I didn't have no joy, and it even changed it changed who I was as a person. So I wholeheartedly agree and believe that the joy of the job is way more important. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. Gabriella Lett.
Hi, for me, it's gonna be financial security because I've got two jobs. One's a retail job that I absolutely hate, and the other is a library job that I enjoy. But like at the end of the day, I love seeing both those paychecks hit at the same time because I know that I can pay my rent and my bills and I will still have money left over for other fun things.
Thank you, Gabriella. Javier, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. I don't believe that there should be a decision of either having a livable wage or being able to do what you love. There should be a thriving wage for everybody. We've seen it during this pandemic that we have essential workers. Every job is important to the fabric of society, and people should not have to choose whether they do what they love or being able to afford basic necessities. There should be a thriving wage for all people, regardless of what they do.
Thank you, Javier. Mark Lannon.
I would again like to echo what Javier just said. For me, it comes down to a decision: would I rather survive or be able to thrive? And I think for too long, too many West Virginians have been stuck in survival mode and grown accustomed to it. And it's quite frankly not fair. I don't think that we should have to choose between, a livable wage, being able to provide a moderate amount of necessity, and what we really love to do. A lot of people in this forum today talked about how they're getting into social service fields. They want to serve the community. I don't think there's anybody in this room who's looking to get rich quick, but I don't understand how somebody can be expected to do their job while having the stress of not being able to provide and care for themselves and for their family. I mean, how can you worry about providing care for other people if you can't even secure your own needs and wellness?
Thank you, Mark. I would like to thank everybody who contributed to our conversation today and everybody for being here. I would now like to hand it off to Dr. Gilmer.
Thank you, Sarah. I just want to say that I agree with so much of what you have said today. You shouldn't have to choose between your passion and security. And one of the things the National Institutes is most committed to is trying to create a world in which that doesn't have to happen anymore. I want you to know that not only are you listening to each other this morning, but business, industry, education, civil rights leaders from all across the country have benefited from listening to your conversation today. And it was important to me that a student conversation be led by a student. And I want to thank Sarah Wicks for doing a fantastic job of that. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I've been in many rooms across the country with people who are supposedly leaders in our fields. And I have to say, I've never heard any of those conversations be any more fruitful. So you are leaders in your field. Your field at the moment just happens to be the field of being a student. And I want to say to you, as you were talking about the challenges of COVID-19, please don't let COVID-19 rob you of your dream. If you do, it wins. I know this moment is hard, and I know that being a student in this moment poses challenges that I can't even imagine. But please continue to rise to those challenges and don't let COVID-19 rob you of your dream. I also want to say that Betty Knighton and I will be talking very shortly about how to continue this conversation. This was such a rich conversation that I know the National Issues Forums is going to want to sustain and continue it. I'm going to give the last word today to our Chancellor, Dr. Tucker, and then when Dr. Tucker is finished making her remarks, Tori, I'm going to ask you to wrap up for us and invite people to the rest of the National Institute sessions. Chancellor Tucker.
Thank you, President Gilmer, for this really, really wonderful event. You guys were just absolutely tremendous. And it's so nice to have the opportunity to showcase West Virginia students on a national stage. You all make us proud every day, and you just did it all across the country. So thank you so much for that. And Sarah Wicks, I can't reiterate enough what a terrific job you have done facilitating this conversation. I don't know what field you're going into, but I hope that some sort of facilitation is a part of the job credentialing that you need, because you're wonderful at it. Students, the comments that you made today really sort of humble all of the rest of us in the room. Your participation, your willingness to be honest about things that are difficult, sometimes things that are embarrassing, it's the only way that we're going to move forward. The only way that we can move forward is by having these open dialogues and these open conversations, and so that we can learn from you, right? Because ultimately that's my job. My job as chancellor is to be advocates for you, to be advocates for higher ed on the state level and at the national level, and to make sure that the policy decisions that we are making are not policy decisions that a bunch of old folks who aren't students stuck in a room have decided need to be made on your behalf, but are in fact policy decisions that are being made because they're informed by the experiences and the difficulties and the benefits that you all have on an everyday basis at your institutions. I want to echo something that President Gilmer said. You know, we really have to be thinking about your futures right now. And it does scare me when I look at the demographics of students who are dropping out of college right now. When I see the number of part-time women who are dropping out of college, who I know are doing so because they're too busy working and dealing with the virtual schools of their kids. Your futures are vital, not just to you, but to all of us. They're vital for our state, they're vital for our nation. And we have to keep looking forward to your futures. And if there is something that is stopping you, if there is something that is blocking you, if there is something COVID related or otherwise that is getting in your way that we can fix, you need to tell us, because the only way we can fix it is if you tell us. So please reach out. Please reach out to your counselors at school, your professors, your presidents, me. You all have a direct line to me too. So please do that. And we're gonna work with you. I promise you that I have heard what you have said. I promise you that I will take what you have said to the State House and make sure that the governor and our legislators know. We are gonna continue these conversations. I promise you that, and we're gonna do better together. So I wanna thank you all very much for today. And Dr. Gilmer, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. I see a student saying that she didn't get to chime in quite as much as she wanted today, and I apologize for that. There are so many of you with so many great things to say, but I want to assure you all this is the beginning of the conversation. This is not the end. And with that, Dr. Jackson, I'm going to let you bring this conversation to a close.
All right, thank you facilitators, and thank you students for being able to share your voice today. Again, as the Chancellor said, you all have vital futures, and as Dr. Gilmer said, you need to look past your current situations and see what the future holds for you. We will, again, this is the first session of National Institutes for Historically Underserved Students. You can find sessions on our YouTube channel, wbup.edu. You also received an email with the full agenda. The next session is at 3 p.m. today, and we would be delighted if you would join us on YouTube. Have a great day.